Bounces. As the Crows had their wings clipped, the Swans were soaring. None higher than Tony Lockett, whose 11 goals tightened his side's hold on a place in the 8. And while Lockett was supreme, the great man wasn't far behind. Beneath the glare of Monday night's lights, Gary did his stuff oh so well.
It doesn't take him long to find the spotlight, and Gary Ablett shone as brilliantly as ever last night. We'll be taking a closer look at him and the Cats a little later on. Thanks for joining us on Football Feedback. I'm Tim Lane. Well, Port Adelaide has been in the news all week. It will enter the AFL competition next season as Port Power and has already forced Victoria into a state of emergency. Rohan Connolly and former Port Vice-Captain Dwayne Russell will be along tonight to discuss the various implications of Port's admission to the AFL. Bernie Quinlan has kept a relatively low profile since his coaching stint at Fitzroy ended last year. He also joins us to talk about the Lions and his playing days. We'll take a look at all the news and issues from the round, but before we do that, any of that, I'm joined as always, albeit one night later than usual, by Lee Matthews. And Lee, last night, those new offensive Magpies without McGuan, Williams, Monkhorst, now Rocker.
That damn Aboriginal curse hit again.
Yes, they didn't look quite as offensively potent, did they?
It's a bit hard to be offensively potent when some of your offensively potent players are sitting in the grandstand, Tim, I think. But
was that your experience?
I must say, the last 3 years at Collingwood, it's been normal to have 3 or 4 or 5 of the good players missing almost all the time. So Tony Shaw is now knowing what it's like because really the last 2 or 3 games haven't gone well for Collingwood. So sure he'll be really scratching the head.
Rohan Connolly from the Sunday Age is with us, as he always is. And Rohan, 56,500 last night. What did you make of that as a roll-up for Monday Night Football?
Yeah, I would have thought they probably would have wanted at least that, Tim. I mean, I know Ross Oakley will probably trot out the people prefer football at night line again, but you know, you had one big game between two, reasonable drawing and good sides. It was the only game on the day. I think there's a fair argument that if you had to put the same game on Sunday afternoon, you probably would have got up to 70,000. So I would have thought they would have wanted at least 56,000.
What might have proven one point, if you don't put the fireworks on, people don't go.
Well, if you listen to some people in the league, the fireworks are a good enough reason alone for having night football, so I don't buy that one either, frankly.
I wonder if they've got that many this week for that match between traditional rivals Victoria and Allies.
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting to see how many Allies fans are flying down from other states, actually.
Pack of mongrels, those Allies supporters.
Yeah, they really get on your nerves. I just want to know if that makes Victoria the axis in this case.
I reckon there's busloads coming up from Tassie.
You weren't supposed to say that. It's a well-rehearsed program, usually. Well, let's talk about the Victorian team, and of course lots of question marks about both the Vics and the Allies in terms of who among the stars will actually line up on the MCG this Saturday. The Vics have been training at Waverley late this afternoon, and our man Rob Gaylard was there.
Kevin Sheehan joins us out here at Waverley after training with the Vic squad going around. Kevin, welcome to Optus Vision tonight and to the footy show, but we've got a couple of late scratchings.
Yes, unfortunately, Rob, Tony Lockett is out of the game. Would love to have played, he'd said to us last week, but after Bruce Reid, the Victorian doctor, consulted his surgeon in Sydney today, we decided it was too great a risk for Lockett to try and line up for Victoria. So he is one scratching, along with Gavin Brown, who has pulled up quite sore after last night, but that was something we did expect. He has been trying to manage a back hamstring problem for a couple of weeks.
Just having a look at training here tonight, I know the Geelong boys, you've given them the night off virtually because of the game last night here, and a few of the other boys just a little bit tender. We have a look at a few of the Carlton boys still floating around. Justin Madden's not here.
Yes, the Geelong boys are all pretty well okay, except for Paul Couch, who has the flu and is in bed today, but the Geelong fellas will come up and be available for selection. So they come up okay, and of course Justin, it's only Wednesday, and as the Carlton guys said, Justin's rarely out in the track before Thursday night, so it's a great plus to have him out, so he's certainly available for selection.
I just had a chat with a couple of the boys sitting over there in the dugout a moment ago, and there's a strong emphasis on this big squad, and it all surrounds the word camaraderie.
Yes, Rob, we're on the first day of a couple of day camp here. It's the first time the Vics have really gone in together, to live in together for a couple of days to build that camaraderie. they're at each other's throat from week to week in the normal thrust of AFL footy, but for this week, it's the one week where they do get together and represent the Big V with pride. And tonight we're going to build on that camaraderie, and we've got a couple of special guests who are going to come and have a chat to the guys.
Namely, can you give too much away or not?
Well, we can give it away because the great John Nichols, a magnificent player, of course, for Carlton, and a great, proud Victorian, will address the group, along with two other greats in Robbie Flower. Everyone respects his great efforts for Melbourne and for Victoria, and Gary Wilson, a champion at Fitzroy, and in his last year of VFL football, captain Victoria.
Just also, before we go back to the boys in the studio, Kevin, I noticed a couple of things out here today, and as a team manager, from your perspective, a few of the guys, and it's only just something that perhaps I look at, a few of these fellas that are playing in this particular squad are of the quieter mould. How do you get around this? Is this what the whole idea of this camp's about?
Well, I think we're going to do an icebreaker called Dipper. Robert DiPier Domenico, as a former Vic player, has joined the group, and he'll ensure that there's plenty of spirit among them as they relax a little bit later tonight after we're addressed by some of those greats who have talked of. So it is getting to know one another, one of the purposes of a camp over a couple of days.
Kevin, thanks for taking the time out to have a bit of a chat with us. So I'm going on a bit of a reconnaissance mission myself a little bit later on, Tim. Hopefully it'll be at a different venue, and I hope someone up here in the grandstand at Waverley does turn that mobile phone off before I come back to you. It'll be in the dark. I hope I've got the right address, but I'll join you a little bit later on.
That's our private detective calling you, Rob, to find out where the heck you're going. But, Rohan, it looks as though the powers that be are going to have to work harder and harder by the year to drum up the state of origin thing. And without any genuine interstate rivalry, this just may not fire, I fancy.
Yeah, look, I'm a bit of a cynic on state footy these days, Tim, I'm afraid. I mean, as you've had more interstate sides introduced, I think it's just naturally taken away some of the lustre from it. I think the crowds in Western Australia for the state games almost halved overnight as soon as West Coast came into the competition. It took a little bit longer to sink in Adelaide, but I think they're sort of going the same way. And even last year, I mean, the Ted Whitten factor, I think, was a pretty large factor in them getting the crowd that they got. So, yeah, it's getting harder and harder to justify, I think, as part of the football calendar. And Port Adelaide in next year, if we don't get a merger, although it looks likely we will, maybe, you know, that'll give them the excuse to sort of chop it all together.
Well, we'll push on and talk about some aspects of round 9, which is now just behind us. And Lee and I have clashed once or twice, almost heatedly on this program, about the physical contact side of the game. Is Mark Prosciutto becoming the modern-day Dermot Brereton, I wonder? He is very hard at the man with the ball and not always actually after the ball himself, Lee.
Well, I mean, the first priority any footballer should be to go for the ball. The second priority is if the opposition get there first, is to, I suppose, hit them hard, make them aware of the physical contact. And sometimes a split-second choice of whether you go for the ball or go for the opposition is a fine line. And I think Mark Prosciutto is one of those players who likes to use his big, strong body and doesn't mind charging in and knocking people over.
Well, I think on every one of those the ball was in shot, wasn't it? So it wasn't as though he was attacking players who were nowhere near the footy.
Yeah, but I mean, nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that, what Prosciutto did. But I think sometimes, just from his football, I think sometimes he does go at the guy when he should go at the ball, which would be in the best interest of the Crows. And I think he sort of treads that fine line.
I think sometimes too, perhaps we're a bit guilty of this too, the media can build up a guy and talk about how tough he is. And I know Prosciutto is one of the main Adelaide guys used as an example of a more physical player. You just wonder sometimes whether they start reading a bit too much of that themselves and start concentrating on the wrong aspects of the game.
Can I tell you one thing? When there's a split-second decision, do you go for the ball or do you go for the opposition player coming at the ball, often that's the lack of courage. Like the courageous bloke goes at the ball, and sometimes, you know, when you don't quite go at the ball, it's a bit brave or a bit, what's the word, less dangerous for you to brace yourself for the contact rather than going hard for the ball. So it's not always the most courageous bloke or the toughest bloke.
Contact of a different sort now, as Wayne Carey and John McCarthy clashed early in the contest on Friday night. McCarthy playing with a cheekbone fracture, and I wonder if he was being tested out by former North Melbourne teammate.
Well, certainly it's great video analysis to find that, and maybe that's a good theory that John McCarthy's had a fractured cheekbone, which is why he wears the helmet with the cheek pads, and maybe it's a physical intimidation by Wayne Carey just to let him know that I know about that.
I mean, with all due respect to John McCarthy, though, I think Wayne Carey's got bigger names to worry about than him, hasn't he?
Well, he has, but I think there is a physical intimidation factor in football. Whether that was, I mean, really, we're reading a lot into that incident, to be honest. I would have liked to have known what Wayne was saying at the time, whether there was any words accompanying the action.
I think the maker of the helmet will be pleased to see it tested out in such fine style anyway.
Well, hopefully it stood the test. Pushing on, and we go back, in fact, a week in time to the now celebrated Silvani Ablett incident, in which Gary Ablett was paid a free kick on the Friday night of round 8. And it produced his first goal against Carlton. And we have another look at that incident in which Silvani did give the champion a little shove, but the sort of thing that normally is allowed by the umpires. And then we're going to see one that occurred at the MCG on Saturday between Melbourne and Essendon. And Rohan Saws, the umpire there, was again the umpire in an incident involving Mark Mercury and Darren Cowell. And it's interesting to juxtapose those and consider the different response from the umpire when this happened. No mark taken here, but certainly a shove, and Rohan Saws called play on.
Yes, I think Gary Ablett, Gavin Wanganeen, a couple of players like that, they Darren Buick, I'll name a couple of Essendon players, they do get free kicks fairly easily, and I think that was just an incorrect decision, as we spoke of last week, that against Silvani, I think that was a poor decision, and the one with the Melbourne Essendon was probably a correct one, play on.
I just think it's a subconscious thing, you know. I mean, you get a key forward and a key backman. It's a decision that's going to either mean a goal or clearing a possible scoring opportunity. One out in the wing involving two midfield players probably isn't going to have as much direct bearing on the scoreboard. I just think maybe the umpires now are more sensitive towards those holding infringements at either end of the ground.
Should be the opposite, shouldn't it?
Used to be.
Yeah.
Well, it should be. I mean, the umpires say that wherever the free kick is on the field doesn't make any difference to them, but there's no doubt that the free kick, paid or not paid, within goal scoring distance, has enormous effect on games, on the result.
A couple you might have seen, Mark Mercury again in the heart of it at the MCG, and that little chip kick after deliberating like a Fremantle docker for a moment, just couldn't find the right option, so he went onto the left boot and dribbled it and found touch. Deliberate out?
Well, I mean, it's obviously deliberate out, but I don't know whether it's a free kick. I mean, it is a difficult decision for umpires. I mean, a player should never get penalised for deliberate out of bounds, because as long as you're trying to go along the line and going deliberately out of bounds, they let it go. It's when you go straight for the boundary line, and that shouldn't happen. It's just really not very good awareness, I don't think, by players to do that.
It was going forward, wasn't it? Just at an angle.
I think the main reason that annoyed the Melbourne people so much was because Marcus Seecamp had been pinged on the other side of the ground for a handball that, you know, he was a good 20 metres inside the boundary line, but it went straight over the line. But I actually felt that one was okay. I mean, he's kicked the ball at least 25, 30 metres in his side's direction, you know, so it's not as though he's gone straight over the line. And I think umpires are far less prepared to pay deliberate when a guy kicks it rather than just, you know, bundles it out over the line, aren't they?
Well, a word that's crept into the footballing vernacular in recent seasons is vision, and Brett Lovett of Melbourne against Essendon found a way of countering Mark Harvey's vision, as you might have seen on Talking Footy last night. And we were onto this one actually a couple of days ago. They managed to get it to air before we did. Was he really trying to prevent Mark Harvey from considering the options, Lee?
I wish we could ask Brett Lovett exactly what he was trying to do, but it appeared that way. I mean, I've got no other explanation for it, to be honest.
I couldn't see anything in it, and as someone pointed out earlier, I mean, it's pretty hard for Harvey to shoot off a handball lying flat on his back, I would have thought. So, I mean, the time to give off the handball is now, isn't it, when his vision's clear?
Yes.
Laying onto the hands, perhaps. Rohan, let's talk about Port Adelaide, and you're of the opinion that they're getting the rough end of the pineapple.
Yeah, I am actually. I mean, I just think every time a new interstate club has come into the competition, we've gone through this same charade, lots of huffing and puffing and beating of Victorian chess, but we're a bit hypocritical about it. I mean, we always say that we want them in and we want them to be successful, but we just don't want them too successful, and I don't think you can have your cake and eat it too. And I was very surprised that the Commission buckled under the weight of the clubs on the concession front to such a degree it did. I mean, initially they were offering, I think, 2 uncontracted players, 8 priority picks before the national draft and 6 before the pre-season. That's now been reduced to 4 uncontracted players, 5 before the national draft and only 1 before the pre-season draft. Now, two points I make here. One is that it's one thing to offer uncontracted player concessions, but it's another thing altogether to actually get the players over the line. And Fremantle's a good example of this. I mean, the Dockers had the opportunity to use 12 uncontracted player concessions over 2 years. They're only able to pick up 5 players. I mean, 7 of them were left unfulfilled. That's because what happens usually is they put all their eggs in one basket. In their case, it was Stuart Lowe. When he decided not to go, that left them really nowhere to turn. It was too late. So I just question the value of those uncontracted player concessions anyway.
There is an inflationary spiral out of that, isn't there? That when clubs have to fight to keep their own player, obviously they've really got to kick in some more dollars.
Sure, but I think maybe the Victorian clubs should be thinking more over the long term. I mean, look at Brisbane. Brisbane's a classic example of a side that when it came in got nothing. They were basically uncompetitive for at least 5 years. And the long-term effect of that was that the league has had to keep propping them up with further concessions. If they had been competitive right from the outset, their concessions would have already ended, and it would have caused Victorian clubs a lot less grief, I suspect.
And Port will have the same salary cap as the rest of the competition. I mean, what numbers have you heard for some of the Buckleys and Wanganeen's of players they may well be targeting?
Telephone book numbers, really. Write your own ticket. I mean, you know, $1 million figures I've heard quoted. But, I mean, I think the Stuart Lowe example proved that money isn't always going to do it. I mean, Wanganeen and Buckley, more so Wanganeen, obviously there's a South Australian connection, but you know, money isn't always going to be the most important issue for guys, and you've got to get them to uproot their whole environment, leave their families. You know, there's a lot more to it than just giving them big sums.
Lee, a quick one from you. Fremantle, Sydney and Footscray all caused major upsets at the weekend, playing on their home grounds against interstate teams. You're going to tip the home team in all these interstate matchups?
Well, I should, I think. I think you shouldn't even bother about the form and just tip the home state, because, I mean, we're used to home ground advantages, but the home state advantage in this, certainly in the 96 season, just seems amazingly strong.
It's not going away. It almost seems to be growing.
Yeah, it does. And I think it probably indicates the Eagles are the one side that have been able to come to Melbourne and play almost as well in Melbourne as they did in Perth. And maybe that's just a real sign of just what a good team the Eagles have been, what a good, strong group of blokes they've had in this 90s period.
It also leaves the Crows more open for criticism too. I think the fact that the Eagles have done it okay. I mean, that is a pretty hard ask, a 4-hour plane trip, but 45 minutes, I mean, you know.
Well, don't go away, because we'll talk about all of those things and more in a little while. Incidentally, there is some tabulation of Adelaide form home and away. And the Crows in Victoria have won 21.8% of their matches since they came in. Victorian clubs at Football Park, a little more successful, but not a whole lot, 27.3. So I suppose before we in Victoria start howling them down as weakies when they cross the border and travel east, we ought to consider that. We'll talk about all that and more, including our talk with former Port Adelaide Vice-Captain Dwayne Russell after this break.
Cats that play the blues longer than me, all sure.
Welcome back, and shortly we'll be speaking with former Port Adelaide Vice-Captain Dwayne Russell, one of the few men actually to play with the Port Adelaide Magpies who hasn't taken part in any of their 33 premierships. I'll get in early, Dwayne, but we'll talk to you shortly. Round 9 ended 75 hours after it got underway on Friday night, and in 75 hours of league football you're bound to see some highlights. Let's have a look at the best of the best in round 9.
Friday night, and McKernan continues to get the jump on his opposition.
Looking out here for McKernan, magnificent leap and mark.
Crocker, fingertip precision.
Top effort. That is a great mark. Taken by Darren Crocker.
North again, and John Blakey around the body.
Good kick round the body. That's a goal.
Freeborn, little time to decide.
Simpson kicked 3 goals already. Gets it back to Freeborn. Snapshot. Magnificent kick. That's a magnificent kick by Freeborn.
Shane Crawford, hard at the ball.
Ball running down, caught beautifully by Shane Crawford.
No signs of back problems from the Demon skipper this week.
Great mark.
Cockatoo Collins becoming one of the great tacklers.
One bounce, ridden into the ground. There was a great tackle by Cockatoo Collins.
Simons, great aerial skill.
Looking for someone to take a mark. There's a mark, all right, a brilliant mark taken by Michael Simons for the Bombers.
The Cocky flies from nowhere.
He's there again. Cockatoo Collins.
And Wanganeen, brilliant control.
To centre of the ground. That's a great mark, Wanganeen.
For Ramiro, it was nearly lights out.
Ramiro, whoa, bang, crash, put down by Rashuto. Heavy stuff, it goes to Wallace. Dodging.
King Kuta controls the air.
Towards the centre of the ground. Kuta flies over the back.
Bradley, all class.
Further field of Bradley. Dodging and weaving, that's clever. Onto the left foot, goes bang and puts it through the middle. Great play, Bradley.
And Kuta on the burst.
But here he comes on, look at this. Kuta finishes, sprints clear, kicks a goal. Oh, fantastic club, Kuta finishes, brilliant goal.
Last night, and Biddiscombe, a bit of wizardry.
Is the call. Snap. Oh, this is a lovely snap by Biddiscombe.
Ronnie Burns, centimetre per.
Just off the interchange bench. A bit of magic from Ronnie. Screws her around the corner. Sensational Ronnie Burns.
Well, as ever, electrifying sporting action and excitement. Back to the Port Adelaide issue, and one of the great unknowns in the debate about their entry conditions is the matter of the benefits that Port Adelaide will derive by their long-standing tradition and tradition of tremendous success. Dwayne Russell was a vice-captain of Port Adelaide. He played 8 seasons at the club, coming through from the juniors, 71 games, and he joins us tonight. Dwayne, thanks for being with us.
It's a pleasure. I've had 11 knee operations, but the largest scar I bear is that mental scar that you brought up only moments ago. Thanks for bringing that one up and opening it up nicely.
How did it happen? Or not happen?
84 grand final, yes, scores are around about level, and yes, it was there for the taking, and yeah, it's a large mental scar. I had the ball about 50 metres out, which what I did now, I suppose, is the right thing to do. I centred it to the top of the goal square because we had a 2-on-1 situation in the goal square, Russell Ebert and Tim Evans against Neil Baum's younger brother, Craig Baum, and sent it to the top of the goal square. Ebert led. Evans dropped back to the goal line and Baum took the mark, ran it out. They got a goal and the rest is history. And actually jumped on a cruise ship with a few of my Port Adelaide buddies after that and took off to get out of town. And we were about 4 hours out of Sydney, and the guy came up to me and said, "You're Dwayne Russell, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You lost the grand final for us." So it's funny looking back on it now, but it wasn't too good a time when it happened.
I must leap to Dwayne's defence here, Tim. I read a match report of that game just the other day, and the author of the match report said that he was easily Port's best player, and it was no fault of Dwayne Russell's that Port lost. So there's a square off.
Thanks for that.
That's okay.
I'll give you that little...
There are supporters whose memory of the game only takes in the last minute.
It was Dwayne's copy of the match report.
And Port Adelaide, I mean, really, they've been the most successful football club in Australia in their competition, like 33 premierships, isn't it, in 100 years? What's the kind of the principles? What are the secrets of the club or the...
I think it is just tradition and history. I mean, it all started a long, long time ago, the fact that they have a history of and a tradition of winning grand finals, and they've won all 6 of their last grand finals, which is, you know, considering I come from Geelong, it's a phenomenal amount. So it is an amazing stat, and I think it's just the history. The tradition is a winning tradition, and that's hard to breed into a club, as you well know, Lee. It's hard if you at one stage coaching a team which has a history of losing to turn that around, but if your history is to win, then the players all of a sudden feel they have that tradition to uphold, and there's a big responsibility on the players of the day.
How far will it take them when they come into the big league?
I think it'll take them a little part of the way to winning the close games. I think when the games are in the balance, say at three-quarter time, those kind of games, I think those are the ones where perhaps that history and tradition, the fighting spirit, will get them over the line. But I mean, when you're playing against the Carltons of the world, it's going to be very difficult for them to overcome such a skilled and such a physical team like the AFL teams that presently are in the competition are. If you look at the Port players, they're very, I suppose, slight compared to the AFL well-built teams.
It's a fairly old side too, isn't it, Dwayne? I mean, just having looked through it the other day, I think there's 4 or 5 guys on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah.
How many of those guys do you think are going to be able to cut it at AFL level? And we've seen a few of them before, haven't we, like Fabian Francis, Rohan Smith?
Yeah, for the people who barracked for St Kilda when Rohan Smith was there, they had a glimpse of him, but a lot of people wouldn't know him, wouldn't know Delaney, who played with Fitzroy. There's a guy called Timmy Geneva, who's the captain of the side at the moment. He's, as you say, on the wrong side of 30, but I think their nucleus and I think their one of the traditions has been they've always been able to find good young players, and it seems amazing that you look back years and years ago, the Abernathys, the Phillipses, the Craig Bradleys. Okay, that's a decade ago now that they came over here, and now you're looking at the new ones, the Wanganines, the Cockatoo Collinses, even the Braden Lyles playing for the West Coast Eagles. So I wouldn't underestimate Port Adelaide's ability to be able to bring on a new crop of youngsters, and that's going to be the secret. If the youngsters are good enough, they'll go okay.
Any idea who's at the top of their list? We've heard Nathan Buckley's name mentioned, Wanganines, of course.
Yeah, I think Wanganine's going to be the prime target, but don't be surprised. I mean, everyone's talking about Wanganine if Shea Cockatoo Collins is all of a sudden given an ask, would he like to come home? And there's plenty of them out there. There's the Wakelands, there's 4 or 5 players at the Crows, like Brown, and Anderson would almost go back automatically. Hodges maybe given back, so there's a fair list there.
I think a good point on Wanganine too, isn't it, Dwayne, that his manager, a guy called David Keys, I think actually has an official role with Port Adelaide, so it's a fairly close connection, I think.
Yeah, David Keys has been at the club for a long time, and he had a lot to do with Bruce Abernathy's upbringing, and he's been at the club that long in an unofficial capacity. Now it's virtually become official, but his unofficial capacity for years and years was to look after the recruits and make sure when they come to town, or if they're just from a couple of districts away, that they're well and truly looked after and they love the club. He did that with me, and you know, I barracked for another club when I was a little kid, but once I went to Port Adelaide, I never wanted to go anywhere else.
You spoke about their winning culture. Is there any point or two that you could illustrate it with?
I think, you know, the mental process that a great athlete goes through, Lee, when the game or any event is in the balance, and you have to make sure that your mind is aware that if your mind doesn't go through the right process, the winning positive thinking process, then there's no way known you're going to be able to dish out the skills. Your body's not going to be able to respond. If your mind's negative, worried about what's going to happen, gee, if I mess this kick up or whatever, then all of a sudden you will mess it up. So they have that positive thinking. I think that's the power of the mind is a very powerful tool, and they have the ability to be able to use the mind well.
Around the club, is there things that the club does that you could put your finger on that sort of
after the game, the perfect example is after every game the players all go up to the club. Now it's not 2 separate rooms. The players go to one room and the members and supporters go to another. There's one great big room. It's at the top of the grandstand. Everybody goes in there and socialises after the game, whether you win or lose. The members have about 2 hours from the time the bell rings to the time the coach gets up to speak to donate money to the players if they think that the players deserve something, whether it be $1, whether it be a kid who wants to give his pocket money to a Scott Hodges who kicked 8. And they all go up and they donate, and then the coach gets up, he responds to the members, speaks to them all, and then every player is called up one by one, and their performance is assessed, and they're given their $20 or $30 if they played badly, or their $700, $800, $900 if they played extremely well on a good day. So it's accountability, and that's a big factor, I think. There's a lot of players, and I think the Crows are facing this at the moment, that aren't really accountable fully for their performance. And if you're not accountable, then it's easy to sneak away from a poor performance. If you're accountable and you have to face the members and the past players and the tradition of the club, then all of a sudden you make the point of making sure you perform at your best. Pride in performance is a big thing.
Were there any days there when the players were left in the red that, you know, like you had a bad game and you ended up paying the supporters?
Well, that's another beautiful thing. Even if you played really badly and if you didn't even get a game, guys like David Keys and the match committee would make sure you got an envelope with a little bit on it. And you walked away and you had a couple of free beers and you socialised with the members after, and they told you whether you played well or not.
You made the comparison between Port and all their premierships and Geelong, where they've been a bit elusive in recent times. Can you see things about Port which are superior to Geelong playing at a higher level?
Much, especially when I first went to Geelong and they were talking about at the start of the year, well, let's hope we make the finals this year. Our aim is to make the finals, whereas Port Adelaide never ever thought that way. It was always, well, we're winning the flag this year and anything less will be failure. So that was the one interesting mindset that I had to overcome, I suppose, at Geelong firstly. The other thing was the players socialising as a group. There was, you know, after the game and after training, players just drifted off, you know, without a goodbye or whatever. It wasn't such a close-knit group of players, and one of the things about Port Adelaide is you always got together on a Sunday morning, whether it be for training was the I suppose false reason, but it was really the drink after training and the socialising aspect that kept everybody closer than anyone at Geelong was.
I want to turn the conversation to the Crows now and the on-the-road thing that has caused them such enormous problems, and they were soundly beaten at Footscray. I wonder if these aspects of Port, though, will make them a more formidable proposition on the road early on than the Crows have been.
I think so, but I think it all comes down to the old story if you haven't got the cattle, then you can't really win games. So it's going to be hard if they haven't got the players initially to be able to come up with wins and losses. Losses will be a lot easier than wins, obviously, but the thing is, once they do get a nucleus of players, then perhaps they will be able to do what the Crows can't do, and that is put in regular performances over here that at least the people that go and see the game can say, gee, they tried hard today, Port Adelaide. I went and saw the Crows on the weekend, and everybody that was there walked away from that and thought, gee, aren't the Crows an insipid bunch?
Are they an insipid bunch, Lee, or do they play in Melbourne about as Victorian teams do when they go to Football Park?
Well, possibly. It's just, I mean, everyone theorises on it, and it's just amazing. I mean, they probably a 15-goal different side in Adelaide than they are in Melbourne.
The reason we don't let the Crows get away with it is because we know how good they actually can be. So we can't really let them get away with continuing to be so poor.
Actually, one sort of, I suppose it's a theory that you know, some of the guys really competitively might be a little bit fragile, and they need the emotional support of the home crowd. I mean, that they really look like a front-running team. If they're going well, they're good. If they start to struggle and they begin badly, then they really end.
But don't you use that? I mean, you as a coach would tell your players to use that. The fact that when you go away, use the silence as a spur.
There are some figures which sum up the Crows' woes in Melbourne pretty well. That's at the Victorian suburban grounds, 3 out of 26, a couple at Optus Oval and 1 at the Whitten Oval. That was at the start of this year against Fitzroy.
What intrigues me about them is that, you know, we've all seen those thrashings they've handed out to everyone at Footy Park, and you get, you know, 3 or 4 blokes running free on the wings. It's almost like a game of keepings off. But I mean, Whitten Oval's a good example. Okay, it's a suburban venue, parochial, whatever, but it's a long, narrow ground. Wouldn't you think that that'd give them the same opportunity to run the ball wide and get into space and stuff? But they almost seem to revert to a completely different game plan, if you like. When they're
but I mean, we talk about the Crows, but Fremantle in 2 weeks they've been beaten by plenty of goals by Fitzroy and come out and beaten Richmond by plenty, and the only difference is they're playing in their home state or away. So it really, the whole national competition has been a bit that way. I mean, the Swans have beaten Brisbane fairly easily in Sydney, so...
I think that's a big worry. I mean, Brisbane's basically played at home, hasn't played away much at all, but their season could really do a big about face in the next few weeks, and it worries me that we could have 2 or 3 finalists playing in the finals this year who can barely win away from home. You should be able to win anywhere, anytime.
Rohan, isn't that exactly what we thought about the Crows in '93, and they came out and blitzed Hawthorn, and Hawthorn got back into the game, but Adelaide won it, and they had a certain team that wears red and black in a fair bit of trouble at half-time in a preliminary final, and gave Carlton a run for their money in between times. It struck me for a while, actually, that finals can in some way be the makings of these interstate teams visiting Melbourne, because the finals are played in a totally different atmosphere. The Eagles in '88 seemed to start coming of age. In '90, Lee against Collingwood, when they drew with you and then beat Melbourne later on, they really started to make
a slightly more neutral crowd at finals. I mean, there's it's not as parochial. Even the home state, the visiting state. I mean, there's neutral supporters, maybe.
The interstate teams are going to get finals at home, though. So that's going to help them initially to get through the early rounds of the finals if they get finals at home.
Boy, us Victorians better hope they never have the grand final anywhere at the MCG.
But if it's a 30-degree day on the MCG in the end of September, then surely the Bears and the West Coast and the Adelaide Crows are going to find it to their liking.
So I reckon one of the big advantages Port will have over the Crows is that the Crows, being an artificially created club, they do have a lot of theatre-goer fans. They're probably going to be less inclined to travel here. I reckon you could probably make an argument that Port will have more travelling fans than the Crows would have.
Port will have a lot of fans that actually are here already that will go.
So look out. I mean, they're supposed to be very arrogant, and we know Carlton fans are arrogant, and they've won 16 flags, so imagine how Port's going to be with 33 under their belt.
And you sense there's a reasonable Port Adelaide group already in Melbourne?
Yeah, there is. We've actually, we've got a show tomorrow night. I'm saying it already. Actually, I've been pumped up the last couple of weeks. It is a marvellous thing for not only for the Port Adelaide people that I know that still drink in the pubs there, but for the players that I know. It's a great opportunity. The National League is such a splendid thing.
Rohan, you referred to the Crows' theatre-goer supporters. By golly, I've never been to a theatre that produces as much noise as Football Park, and the first team that plays a final in that theatre will know that it's been to a footy match.
Well, I went over there for the first game they played, actually, against Hawthorn. They won by 86 points, and not only did all the Hawthorn players cop it and I think were kept up all night outside their hotel, but 3 Victorian travelling journos copped bucket loads as we left the press box that night too, so it's stuck in my memory, I'll tell you.
Drank bucket loads too, no doubt. Well, it was playing in Victoria that caused Robert Shaw's problems at the weekend, and you didn't have to be Nostradamus to be able to predict that the media people after the match were going to want to talk to the Adelaide coach about another defeat in Melbourne.
Must be really frustrating to you, this losses in Melbourne. It just keeps happening.
Yeah, I guess frustrating. I'm not frustrated with the win-loss rate. I'm certainly frustrated with the way we're playing footy. You know, that is a frustrating thing because we didn't play good football today. And look, we just did things today that were totally out of sync with our home team pattern. You know, our delivery, we had as much possession, we had the ball inside our 50 as much, but our poise and our vision today to forward targets was really second rate. There's no doubt about that. And hence, you saw time and time again us not hitting our target, them getting us on the rebound and hitting a nice open forward line and get a goal. So the number of times that we cost ourselves 2 goals, one that we should have got and the one that they got in the top, was the real story of the game, I felt.
Dwayne, what would it be like being Robert Shaw coaching the Crows?
I think it would be fantastic. I think you give that job to a Malcolm Blight or a Vince Lombardi and he'd all of a sudden take it and say, I've got some fantastic players to work with here that are underperforming. That's the kind of team you want to get hold of. You don't want to get hold of a team that hasn't got the players and that are overperforming. I think it'd be a great coaching job to have.
Would he be constantly assuring South Australian folk that in fact he's a Tasmanian and not a Victorian?
I think he'd be constantly assuring the South Australian folk that he is the right man for the job and they're just about to turn the corner.
Thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll look forward to seeing Port Power in action in '97. We might talk to you about them around about then.
Thanks, Tim.
Dwayne Russell, former Port Adelaide vice-captain.